We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of Dungeon Crawlers Radio, where my intro is going to be somber. It's not going to be as exciting as normal because, well, we've lost a beloved companion. Not like he's not dead, he's not gone forever, but temporarily he's not here with us. Unfortunately, Alton has had to take a hiatus from the show, which means you won't get to hear his wonderful somber tones. You won't get to reap his wonderful gaming wisdom, and ultimately, well, he will be missed. I'm just going to leave it at that because I've been thinking about how to start this show out with this excitement and thrill, but honestly, it's a little sad because he will be missed.
You know, we do so love our Alton very much. We do want to let you Dungeon Crawlers know that at this point in time, the intent is that he will return. It may be, it's not going to be right away. It's probably going to be a few months at least, but his desire at this time is to rejoin the show. So don't think that he's gone forever just yet, but we do want to let you know that he's stepping away, and we understand why.
Yes.
We totally support him.
Yep.
And we super duper love Alton. Alton, we love you, and we look forward to having you on the show in the future.
Yes. So this is not a farewell, he's gone forever. This is, Alton is a brother. I mean, both Krebs and I have come to love Alton as a brother. Absolutely. He will be missed from the show. He's still in our lives. He's not like gone forever. But there is something that's happening in his life where he's having to take a step away. And that's why we're supporting him in this and not wanting to add the stress in his life. So he's taking the hiatus. And in the meantime, this means
we've replaced one brother with another brother.
Literally another brother. So, and he has succeeded in his goal. We have heard many, many episodes where Matthew has come on to the show, and he has he's claimed he's thrown Alton in his trunk, and he's claimed that his ultimate goal is to end up on the show. Well, guess what? It has happened. Matthew is on the show. Matthew, the other Krebs, or Brother Krebs, or whatever he decides he's going to be called, is now officially part of DCR.
Hello, everybody. Yay! So glad to be here. And I got away with it because those meddling kids weren't here.
Yeah,
yes.
The truth is, it's just three Altons in a matte coat just stacked on top of each other. So it's just, yeah, it's secretly Alton inside.
Yes. So, with that said, we're still keeping the show the same. The show is still going to be the same DCR. I know in the past when we've changed things up, it's kind of changed. But it's not going to do that this time. There will be a few things that won't be the same. Like, we're definitely not going to have a Rad Dome unless it's an episode where Alton has come back.
Absolutely.
Which he has agreed to do so. Because Rad Dome is Alton's baby.
That was one thing I was going to say, is that I do hope we still are able to put together this Rad Dome we've been talking about.
Yes.
I'd love to get some time on his schedule, maybe, to have him back on and do that. And unfortunately, that would also expose my secret identity, because then he and I would be in the same place at the same time.
Yes.
Allegedly.
It's a good thing you watched a lot of Sherry Lewis and Muppets when you were younger. You've got this, buddy. You've got this.
Unless we don't do anything with that. But anyways, I digress. It's going to be the same show. We have the same knowledge. We've clearly seen that Matthew can hold his own on the topics we've talked about. So, without further ado, we're going to jump into Geek News, move forward, and then get to today's main topic, which I am super excited about.
Me too.
Geek News. I'm gonna start off first. So it's official. Kathleen Kennedy says Star Wars can't recast classic characters. They have decided it's just a big no-no. And, well, I'm going to agree.
They finally figured that out.
They finally figured that out.
Our Star Wars episode was all like dream casting the Zahn trilogy. And now, whatever. Keep going. You're doing great.
Well, they they haven't done Thrawn yet. So, no.
Well, and I'll
Now
tell you
they
this:
never will.
Sebastian Stan and what's his name, Glover.
Yeah, Donald Glover.
Danny. Yeah,
Donald. I can
Donald
always say
Glover.
Danny, and that's
I
not
always
it.
want to say
Donald
Danny
Glover.
too. Donald.
Absolutely great choices. It's okay; they get a pass. But everybody else, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, Danny Glover is Lethal Weapon. So,
He's Predator too, buddy.
and Predator too. All right, Taika Waititi, Star Wars movie is the next film in the franchise, and Kevin Feige is still a little far off. So I'm excited what he's going to come up with, because we've seen what he's done with Thor. And the Thor franchise kind of tapered off and was about to die thanks to Thor 2. And then Thor Ragnarok came out, and and even Love and Thunder looks pretty dang amazing. So I'm excited about that and see what he will do with the Star Wars franchise.
Me too.
Still along with Star Wars, May 27th is the opening of Obi-Wan. Later, it's only 6 episodes, but later this summer, we're going to get Andor, which is going to be awesome. And then around fall, we're going to get season 3 of The Mandalorian. Not only that, next year, we'll have Ahsoka and the Occulti, which the Occulti is set 100 years before Phantom Menace. So that's going to be in the High Republic era. So we may see a younger Yoda and some really cool stuff that happens there. So I'm really excited about that. And if you haven't already seen it, She-Hulk Attorney at Law trailer hit today. It looks pretty funny. It looks interesting. And, Mark Ruffalo is reprising his role as Smart Hulk, Bruce Banner,
and Tim Roth.
Yes.
As Abomination, but just, de-transformed. But
yeah, so I'm super excited to see where they go with this. It didn't show a lot, but I'm wondering if this is during the blip or post-blip.
Yeah, and kudos, shout out to Tatiana Maslany. If anybody who wants to know who she is, go watch Orphan Black.
Yes.
She's the same character, but she plays like 20 different personalities.
I didn't realize that was her. I love
it's her.
Orphan Black.
That is her.
That's why I'm excited.
Yeah, when they gave her the
even more excited
casting,
now.
I'm totally confident in her as casting. I hope the writing holds up. From the trailer, the only thing I'm concerned about is the CGI was a little weak.
I think the CGI is that way because it's a trailer, so it's probably the first stuff, and they'll fine tune that, I'm sure.
That's what
I
I'm
hope
hoping.
so.
All right, I'm done.
And I've got some news today. Keeping with the MCU, Loki Season 2 is not only confirmed, but filming begins in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, heck yes!
The original cast is returning.
Awesome.
So we're going to, with the exception of, Kang, allegedly, but we've got to have, we got Loki, we got Lady Loki, Owen Wilson's coming back, all these people. And so looking forward to that. They have confirmed that Loki was the most popular MCU Disney Plus TV series that they've had. So, yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer.
I'm not surprised by that one, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about the other series because I liked a lot of the other series too. I hope that they have more coming there, but most everything has been one and done kind of a thing. So anyway, Loki Season 2. And the next item. Do you like those cameos in all these Marvel films? There's always...
Which cameo are you talking about?
Ashley Johnson?
Yeah, almost.
Steve Rogers?
We've been missing cameos from the last...
Waldo. Where's Waldo?
Last few movies. Somebody that maybe perchance got blipped. But now we have hope that this cameo is coming back.
Oh.
Marvel has signed an agreement with Genius Brands, who owns POW Entertainment, who owns the likeness to Stan Lee.
Oh my gosh! Is it going to be like deepfake time or?
That's what they were talking about.
I heard that he had recorded a ton of different.
Well, he had, but I think that they used all of that already.
No, he did quite a bit for years to come, but I think it was owned still by the company or something like that.
Well, the agreement includes his likeness, his pictures, his voice,
Wow.
and all existing audio and video recordings that they currently possess. And this agreement will last for the next 20 years. Disney will be able to use it not only in their shows, but also on their cruise lines and at their amusement parks and on their rides. So yeah, I expect that we are going to be seeing Stan Lee get de-blipped.
Oh my gosh.
And show up again in the MCU.
That is phenomenal news. Great find.
So pretty much he's now immortal.
Wasn't he before?
He was always immortal.
Yes.
All right, over to Krebs.
Awesome. So last week I was talking about a couple of books that were leaving D&D Beyond. And we talked about why that was and how it wasn't really that big a deal because of the coverage of content and things of that nature. Coincidentally, and just today, I came across a new article that talks about first the acquisition of D&D Beyond by Wizards of the Coast. Mm-hmm. So WotC bought it for $146.3 million, and Elon Musk is like, I should have bought that. But they acquired D&D Beyond, and in sort of like pseudo celebration of them taking over, they've announced that they're going to make 2 books. I don't think that they're basically adventure modules, but they're making 2 books available for free for the first 7 days after they take over. So starting May 19th, which as you're listening to this show brand new on the air is just yesterday, I imagine. Starting May 19th.
Mark your calendars.
Yes, please do. They are making 2 books free. They are, I'm trying to find the titles really quick, but one title is The Lost Mines of Phandelver. That's PH Phandelver. And where's the, I saw this in the article earlier where they announced the first book. Let me see if I can just find it really quick. I'm so sorry for the delay here. Transition. Oh yeah, the source book is Acquisitions Inc. Acquisitions Inc. is a source book, not an adventure module, but that will be the first book that they make for free. The Lost Mines of Phandelver is a starting adventure, which was included in the Essentials kit and was intended to help new players and DMs get a basic understanding of D&D. And so those 2 things are going to be available for at least the first 7 days. Right now, they're just planning it for the first week, but they taketh and they giveth away. That's how it works, right?
So is it Acquisitions Incorporated?
Yeah, Acquisitions Inc. Yep.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that was a very interesting book. So.
Well, that's okay. And again, I mean, this doesn't really surprise us, right? Like whenever they give free things away, they try to give away supplemental items as opposed to say like, oh, I don't know, the DM core book or the player's handbook or, but all the same, it's still pretty cool to see that they're giving away some free tasty items for people who want to learn more D&D and try some new stuff. Second on my Geek News list, The Orville. This is a show that's a little controversial in my opinion in that when I first saw it, I expected it to be, I think a lot of people expected it to be a Galaxy Questian type film, or I'm sorry, type show. And instead, it ended up being sort of like Star Trek The East Coast, right? Like it was very like, Star Trek The Next Generation is based in San Francisco and they have very like West Coast type of ideals and presentation, but Orville was very sort of more street. It was more street than Star Trek The Next Generation. And to be honest with you, I wanted a comedy and it took itself a little too seriously but didn't have the chops that Star Trek had, and so I fell out of love with it. But recently I've had conversations with people who have told me you need to go back and watch it again because second season was actually really excellent. And so I think I need to give it another shot, maybe. But third season is coming. I watched the trailer for it and it legit looks great. And of all weird things, it's going to stream on Disney Plus.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it's because it's a Fox property, so that's not surprising. Actually, like second season's what actually killed my desire to watch that. Like I got halfway through second season, like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. See, this show, it it causes a pendulum swing, right? Like even I've got Star Trek fans who love it, and I've got Star Trek fans who don't like it at all.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. But Orville season 3 comes out next month. In fact, it comes out June 2nd.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that really made it for me that I didn't enjoy is it felt like they were pushing the envelope too much.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
And
then I watched
some things.
But then I watched Star Trek Discovery, and now all the envelope is ruined for me.
Yeah.
That's another conversation to have another day.
That is. All right. So,
No. Wait, one more piece.
Yeah, one more. All right.
Okay.
Not quite there.
Because this one is for you, Dan. I got this just for you.
All right, just for me.
Evil Dead, the video game.
Oh, yeah.
It is an asymmetric co-op PvP or PvE type game. Yeah. And much following like in the footsteps of Dead by Daylight, which has been a screaming, all the pun intended, horror game success. It follows that same sort of pattern where it's all the players versus sort of one big bad. I was curious about this. I hadn't seen very much about it past its announcement. I've been looking at the visuals and the stills, and it looks really good. Very faithful recreation of Bruce Campbell, which I'm very happy about. But the initial impressions from Polygon, which is a trusted source in my opinion, are extremely positive. They very much like this game. Interestingly, even though it's been out for a week, I have not seen any official review of this game yet from IGN or from GameSpot, but Polygon checked it out, and they think that, as they put it, this is the way asymmetric gaming should be.
Nice.
Groovy.
Yeah, Polygon gave it some sugar, baby. All right, so
now
that is my geek news for the week.
Only way this game can be epic is if you have to recite the words Klaatu, Barata, Nikto.
And you can't say Nikto at the end. You have to say
yes.
Well, maybe I didn't say every tiny syllable, but
yeah. That just tells you how many
Classic.
times I've watched that movie. The fact that I know the exact words.
Klaatu, Barata. Well, either that or you watched This Island Earth or whatever. Or no, Forbidden Planet. That's what it was. Forbidden Planet.
No.
Was it the day the Earth stood still?
Yeah.
Maybe it was the day the Earth stood still. I think you're right. It's
Keanu
one of those
Reeves?
classic. No. The original when the Earth stood still.
The original one?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Geek news is over. Now we're going to move in to the topic at hand.
Daniel, what's our topic?
This is, I'm really excited about this topic. But before I even announce the topic, I just want you to know that we are throwing Matthew into the deep end of the pool. There are sharks with laser beams and razor blades and lemon juice and everything. We've just tossed him in. He's going to be running tonight's show as far as questions and everything for our topic. And I really, I'm sitting way too close to this mic.
Because you're so excited.
I'm excited and I'm leaning forward. So I'm sure many of you that listen to the show, and maybe some of you don't, remember the old days when we had Saturday morning cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
And so our topic at hand is the morning of Saturday morning cartoons, because kids today don't get that. I mean, yes, everything's on demand. They can jump onto Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Plus, or Max, Disney Plus, whatever, and get their cartoons immediately. But there was something amazing about, cartoons after school, but more importantly, Saturday morning when you could sit and have your bowl of your favorite cereal and watch cartoons.
Absolutely.
And so that's what our topic is today. We're going to talk about Saturday morning cartoons, and I'm going to hand it over to Matthew to guide this epic journey of the fantastic animation that we grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's been 20, almost 30 years since Saturday morning cartoons were a regular thing. And the passing has not gone unnoticed. Hopefully, many listeners of this show of similar age to the podcasters
Hold on. Has it really been 20 years?
It's been at least 20 years.
The mid-90s is when they began to kind of taper out, and each network kind of did their own thing, but none of them survived the 90s.
Man, I feel so old now.
Yeah, what's funny is with the addition of Brother Krebs, Daniel, you're not the oldest person on the show anymore.
I know, it's awesome.
You didn't have to
It's
mention
so awesome.
your
I'm not
little brother.
the oldest.
You're a kid again,
But
Daniel.
the crazy thing is, if that's true, I have Saturday morning cartoons have been off the air longer than most of my kids. That's so sad for my kids. Oh, all right. I'll hand it back over.
Oh. Anyway, and so with that passing, there is a certain amount of grief. And
Yes.
so, as Daniel said, we are going to mourn. We are mourning the passing of Saturday morning cartoons.
Mm-hmm.
So, first, let us, with this eulogy, remember the best of our Saturday mornings. So, in addition to pajamas with footies and sludge at the bottom of your cereal bowl, which was the best part.
Sludge was actually
Krebs.
Cocoa Pebbles.
Let's start with Krebs. What were some of your most joyful, favorite, beloved cartoons that were worth getting up on a Saturday for?
If when I sit down and I think about it, I can go through a veritable timeline of all these cartoons as they appeared and disappeared. Some I don't want to take all of the low-hanging fruit, but I will steal a lot of it. Voltron was one of my all-time faves to watch on Saturday. Dungeons and Dragons, which was extremely short-lived.
Preach it, brother.
Extremely short-lived show, but was brilliant in its time. And there was Turbo Teen. There was I was a huge Punky Brewster fan. There was a Punky Brewster cartoon.
Oh yeah?
And we're going to cover a bunch of titles. I have about 100 titles in my head right now that I don't want to spoil. We've talked about, I will take this next one because we've talked about it on the show before, but Silverhawks. Silverhawks was one of the best, most underrated cartoons of the 80s and potentially of all time.
Now that's interesting because you mentioned Voltron, you mentioned Silverhawks, and that is one of the things as I was doing some show prep that kept getting conflated is the after school cartoons versus the Saturday morning cartoons. I seem to remember because I watched Voltron and Silverhawks every day after school. Were they on Saturdays as well?
Yeah, depends on which station.
And it also depends on the season because after school would do rerun episodes.
Yeah.
And prior to that, they would do original airings on Saturdays.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Saturday morning cartoons always consisted of Flintstones, the Jetsons. There was also Mighty Mouse.
I remember Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, Fat Albert was a good one. Captain Caveman.
Captain Caveman.
Popeye. Those were a lot of fun ones. Underdog. I loved Underdog. And then I remember there was a couple other ones that Woody Woodpecker. That was another great one that I loved watching.
See, all of those shows, by the time that we were watching them as kids, were running as reruns.
Oh yeah,
not just on. I mean, they were on Saturdays, but they were also they were on 6 days a week, sometimes.
They were syndicated.
Warner Brothers, Looney Tunes,
Inspector Gadget. I watched a lot of Inspector Gadget growing up.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Great theme song.
Transformers. Yes, it was on Monday through Friday, but it was also on Saturdays. I loved watching that. And I'm sure our listeners are not surprised by that one.
I know, right? Same could be said for G.I. Joe, the original G.I. Joe cartoon.
Mm-hmm. The Smurfs was on Saturday morning, so was Scooby-Doo.
In fact, the Smurfs, I think, had an hour-long slot.
Yeah,
which was amazing.
A double. So those are a lot of the cartoons I watched growing up.
I definitely have some more titles, but I'm worried that if we just waterfall the titles right now,
I know.
then it will ruin the topics going forward. Matthew, give us a challenge or give us a prompt. What do you want to cover?
You read my mind. It's like we're related or something. So choose one of these titles and tell us one episode that sticks out particularly in your mind.
Okay.
All right, I'll start off. Some of my favorites, you mentioned Dungeons & Dragons, and there's a lot of these things that are just great. I'll come around to a few more of them, but for example, Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
That was a great one.
Hello,
Right?
Spider friends.
We had Spider-Man, Firestar, and Iceman. So you had two mutants from the X-Men joining Spider-Man and living Three's Company style in an apartment above Aunt May's garage or something, going to college. And the episode that I remember most is when they got to go meet the X-Men.
That's the same one I watched 100 times.
Yep, and I loved it. It was the first time for me that I had seen the X-Men in animated form. The voice casting was a little bit weird, didn't quite do it for me, but there was Wolverine, there was Shadowcat, Cyclops, Storm, Colossus, it was Professor X,
Nightcrawler,
yes.
In fact, he was an important part. There was a superhero that looked Native American, but he had like
Warpath.
Yep.
He made a
Warpath or Thunderbird. I think it was probably Thunderbird because he died, and I think Warpath was his younger brother who kind of took his place.
Well, I never saw him in the comics myself, but he made a great Mortal Kombat 3 character. Go on.
So that's one of my favorite episodes. I got a few more favorites here, but I'm going to pass it back to you guys. Throw out an episode of one of your favorite comics. Cartoons.
Gosh, that's a hard one. Okay, so I was talking about this with my wife the other night, actually. Because I had like this whole stream of consciousness thing, and it made me giggle a little bit. G.I. Joe, there was an episode where they get a mysterious phone call from a character who was accented, who said, "I am the Viper, and I am coming to see you soon." And then like he hangs up the phone, and then he's like, "I am the Viper, I am coming tomorrow." And then like and G.I. Joe's like weirded out, right? Because they're always fighting Cobra, which is all these like serpent themed terms. They're like, who's the Viper? Who's the Viper? And then he's like, the next day he's like, "I am the Viper and I am coming." And then he like hangs up the phone. And then they do all this preparation. They went and fought Cobra a little bit, and then Cobra doesn't know who they're talking about. And then they come back to their base and they're like all prepared. And here comes this older fellow, a bit portly, in a janitorial jumpsuit, and he has all these cleaning supplies, and he goes, "I am the Viper. I've come to wipe your windows." And that was the episode. That was it. There were so many other episodes that stuck out in my mind, but that one just happened to come up in conversation this week, like last night, I think it was.
I am the Viper.
A whole episode around a dad joke.
Yes,
oh, yeah. That's extra.
That's what
that was
shaped
Saturday
us.
Morning. Yeah,
that was Saturday morning. Whole episode.
What about you, Daniel?
I mean, the one, it's not going to be a surprise. Transformers. Orion Pax Part 1 was a really huge episode for me. And the reason for that, throughout the entire Transformers series up to that point, you've only seen Optimus Prime. He's the commander of the Autobots. But in this, the aerial bots go back in time, and you see that Optimus wasn't Optimus. He was this dock worker named Orion Pax. And because, he gets injured and has to get rebuilt, both him and his girlfriend and his friend, which becomes Ironhide. But that episode was really powerful to me because it showed he was just a normal Autobot.
Like humble beginnings.
Yeah, had humble beginnings and became the hero that we loved. And it kind of, even as a kid, was like, wow. Because, I mean, at that time, I was watching Superman and stuff like that. And here's this mythic hero that you can never become because he's an alien from another planet. There's no way I can be that guy. Yeah. But here's this humble robot that becomes this commander because he's upgraded to that, evolves to that. And it kind of struck me as powerful because it's like, wow, I could become something more than what I believe I am. So that was a great episode for me.
Wow, that's really touching, Daniel. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing.
Stop touching my brother. All right, Matthew. Matthew, what about you?
I had a few more on this list. We've kind of touched on a little bit. X-Men, the series that debuted in 1992. I think it ran from 92 to 96, I want to say.
Yeah.
And Disney is releasing new episodes for.
Yep.
Yes.
And you can rewatch all those old episodes on Disney Plus right now.
And they are worth it.
I really loved that series because it wasn't, I don't want to use the word gritty, but it wasn't quite as gritty as the comic books. It was sanitized for Saturday morning, but they went back and they told some of these stories from the comic books.
Yeah.
And they did a good job with it.
It was
and the voice
faithful.
casting was much better.
Much better.
I mean, the one thing that was also about that is it was a little bit more rougher than we had seen most comic book cartoons at that point. Because
Yes.
before it was always campy, and this actually, there were
It was a
Like,
serious
died.
drama. It was a
Morph
serious
died.
drama.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Right at the
Morph
beginning.
did die.
Yeah.
Forgot about
So, anyway, so I loved X-Men 92, but here's one for you. Who remembers Mighty Orbots?
that. I do remember that. They were like, if I remember correctly, they were like meteor type people, or like alloy or mineral type people that were like in the GoBot Transformer era, that whole point in time. But they were like,
Oh yeah, that was like 84, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's about then. They weren't meteor people. You're thinking Rock Lords.
well, I'm thinking
Yeah.
Rock Lords from, which was actually He-Man?
GoBots.
GoBots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a if I remember right, it was like a Japanese anime that was Americanized, wasn't it?
Actually, it was an American company that hired Japanese animators
Oh,
because
okay.
they wanted to have the
Good
same
enough.
look and feel as Japanese anime. There are 5 robots that combine into the Mighty Orbot. And
What, the Voltron?
It's a Voltron ripoff. Yeah.
So-
Well,
something
or
similar
Power
to that.
Rangers, or any of those things, right?
Yeah, they had a male robot was the main torso, and he was the big strong dude. You had 2 female robots that were the arms. One of them had power over the elements, and another one, I forget what her power was. And then the 2 feet, one of them was like this big chunk of a creature that could eat anything and convert it into energy. He powered the whole thing. And then the last one was a shape changer. Kind of an Anthony Daniels C-3PO type robot that could just change shape into whatever was needed at the
I've
time.
got to look this up now, because I don't
So
remember this.
so this series debuted September 8th of 84.
Wow, good call.
Voltron came out September 10th of 84.
Okay, now that I'm looking at the picture, I recognize the brand, I recognize the IP, but I don't remember the show.
Yeah, I don't.
But Voltron did exist for several years prior in Japan
Yeah.
before it was Americanized.
And we've talked about how Voltron had Mark 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 2 never quite made it to the States. But that's another story. That's another episode.
No, 1 never made it to the States. 2 did make it to the States in a brief stint.
One was the vehicle Voltron. 3
Yeah.
No.
was the Lion Voltron.
Oh.
2
Yeah.
was 3 robots. That
I
were
thought
combined.
I thought 1 was the 3 robots and 2
No.
was the vehicles.
No.
No.
Oh,
No,
okay,
one
yeah,
was the,
you're right.
was
You're
the
right.
vehicles. 2 was the lions, and like you said,
Yeah.
there was 3
No,
robots.
2 is the
combined
3
together.
robots, then 3 is the
So-
Lion bots.
That's the one
So-
that didn't make it.
So the Orbots
Yeah.
was one of my favorites. It had a the theme song was really rocking. It was pretty good for my little 12-year-old self. Loved it, and I just loved the robots. Unfortunately, there were lawsuits because of similarity to other properties. It was marketed very poorly, and they kept changing the time slot.
Oh, that in the 80s, guys, that
That was
killed
normal.
a show. No, but it killed a show.
That's death.
Because remember, for folks at home who don't understand how TV worked, in the 1980s there were no DVRs, there were barely VCRs. It depended on your social status, your economic status to even have a VCR, and no one could program a VCR except for the children anyway. But they didn't know what the time slots were. You had to look at the TV guide or the newspaper listings
There
to figure
was
out
no
when shows were on.
There was no on-screen program guide.
There was no on-screen program guide at all.
You had to actually use TV Guide, or the TV times were published in your local newspaper if
Yeah,
you were lucky.
and you had to memorize the show, like the channels and the slots, or you would miss your show.
Yeah. You know what I looked forward to, because I was a big comic book collector back then, is as the season would approach, they'd start advertising their new cartoons. And they would actually do a 2-page spread that had all the characters and then would tell you the times each of these shows would show up. It was awesome. All right, so Mighty Orbots, and then there were a couple others here, some deep cuts. This might be before Krebs' time, but there was the Tarzan Lone Ranger Adventure Hour.
Oh, I remember that.
Ooh.
You remember that one?
Yep.
It was it was really good adaptation. That was my introduction to Lone Ranger. It took me a while to realize there were actually movies and serials prior to my birth.
And they incorporated Zorro as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. They had Zorro there for a while. So yeah, that was an older one. And then lastly, and then this was usually combined with some other cartoons, but the Herculoids.
Now that I remember.
Oh, I remember those.
Now, those of you who don't remember that name, it was an animated cartoon with a father, a mother, and their young son. And the father and the son had these slingshots that they could throw explosive rocks. But they had a bunch of pets with them, including a triceratops-looking creature that could shoot exploding rocks out of its horn.
It was like a rhino with 4 horns, and the tallest horn could like launch exploding pods.
Right. And then they had a dragon-looking creature that could fly and shoot lightning from his eyes and his tail. And they had this big, huge golem-looking rock creature that was strong and indestructible. And then they had 2, for lack of a better term, shmoos. They were quite amorphous creatures. Yeah, that could change shape and were just blobs.
Yeah, because when everything else fails, Deus Ex Machina blob creature, get in there.
There you go.
And in conjunction with those, I'm remembering 2 other cartoons I used to watch that was very similar to those, which was Black Star.
Oh yeah.
And Space Ghost.
Oh, Space Ghost.
Good ones. All right. Well, let's move on to the next topic. What are some of the worst cartoons? Which ones were wastes of space that took up slots that better cartoons should have occupied?
Oh man.
So that's a tough one. Well, okay, so as a kid, I remember being a kid. I remember what that's like. No, I remember being a kid and thinking that like almost everything animated was a joyful experience. I remember one time I was really bored and I wanted to watch something and I only wanted to watch a cartoon. And Mom said, "Well, have you ever seen Pete's Dragon?" And I was like, "No." And then she put it on and I want you to know I felt like she lied to me. But that's because the original Pete's Dragon was yet a hand-animated dragon character who was super high all the time, and everything else was live action. So I felt let down. But as far as like cartoons on the air that got in the way of good cartoons, I always enjoyed Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes and all that. But I saw them during the week and in other ways that when they came on Saturday, I felt like they were kind of blocking the new stuff, the good, the stuff that I was anxious to see. But even if I'm trying to think if we step away from that, was there anything else? I will confess something. As a kid, I loved Thundercats. I loved it to pieces.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did. In 1997, after graduating high school, I went to the Blockbuster, y'all. I went to the Blockbuster, and they had Thundercats on VHS, like that the first season. And I was like, oh, I want to revisit my childhood because now I'm an adult. And I went and I got the first episode, the first few episodes on tape and everything, and I popped it in. And it was the cheesiest, totally horrible thing I'd ever seen. Like Lion-O's voice is the worst. Other voice actors actually did a pretty good job on that show. He was the main character, and he was horrible, just awful.
Yeah.
So,
did anybody ever explain why Lion-O went into the cryo chamber younger than Kit and Kat?
There was a cryostasis leak.
And when he came out, he's older, but Kit and Kat aren't.
Yeah, his unit leaked.
His pod had a leak. If it had been like Panthero or whatever his name is. Panthera. If it had been him, he would have died.
Yeah.
If it had been Chitaro.
Tigra or Chitara, they would have been toast too.
Maybe, but if it had been Chitaro, none of us would have had the fantasies we grew up with. Like it would have ruined our childhoods in many ways. But Lion-O, there was like a stasis leak and he survived, but he got older and they needed him to be older so that he could be the hero, yada yada yada.
I liked the remake they did where they just kind of cut that part out. He was already grown up.
It makes more sense.
They didn't have the weird. I'm a kid in an adult body, and I'm thinking like an adult when I'm really.
Could you
a kid.
imagine Jack from like Robin Williams' film Jack?
Yeah.
Like him having to be the hero of the show. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm trying to think of other cartoons that I didn't like, but WWF. That cartoon.
Oh.
I think as adults now, with hindsight, we all recognize that every Saturday morning cartoon was really just a marketing ploy to sell toys.
Oh yeah.
Like that's just a well-known thing at this point. But that said, even though I thought like the wrestling figures, such as they were, and the toys were kind of cool and interesting as far as the zeitgeist was concerned, I was never super duper into wrestling. Even to this day, I've never been like super duper into wrestling. I always thought it was like cheesy nonsense, and it made me feel awkward. But the cartoon, even though I would watch it sometimes, it was not the cartoon I wanted to wake up and watch. It was just the cartoon I watched until other cartoons came on.
Right.
Yeah.
What about you, Daniel? What disappointed your Saturday morning?
Oh man, let's jump into the list. I'm going to start with the first one, which would be Filmation's Ghostbusters.
Oh,
now, the reason why this is a disappointment is because it wasn't not the real Ghostbusters.
Oh my god!
I went to watch this thinking, oh, it's the Ghostbusters because I love the movie.
So just to clarify, you mean these are the first Ghostbusters, but not the right Ghostbusters?
Correct.
Yeah.
This is the Ghostbusters where they have the crazy ape and they have the weird car that they're driving in.
The chitty chitty bang bang.
Yep, the chitty chitty bang bang car.
By
the way, mooks, right? Yes. 2 old mooks from New York.
By the way, I had most, if not all, of the Filmation Ghostbuster toys. I had like almost, including the car.
Well, I remember on your wish list, you used to put down you wanted the Ghostbuster toys. I kind of think that Grandma got confused, and
I don't blame her.
Ghostbuster, and she got you the original Ghostbusters, but not the real Ghostbusters.
Yep, that's
now,
right.
The only redeeming quality that this show has is that Peter Cullen was the voice of Eddie Spencer Jr. and Alan Oppenheimer was Prime Evil.
Oh,
so, yeah. Yeah.
For those listening who don't know, give their credentials so they understand the significance.
Yeah, so Peter Cullen is the voice of Optimus Prime, and Alan Oppenheimer is the voice of Skeletor in He-Man, and several other amazing characters. So that one was a huge disappointment because the real Ghostbusters was on at the same time as these guys. They both came out in '86, so it was just like, no, I just want to watch Egon and Venkman and them.
And they were on competing networks.
Yeah.
So it's possible they could have been being broadcast at the same time.
Several times they were.
Yeah. And for the record, the Filmation Ghostbusters did not last long because the real Ghostbusters was dope.
Yes. It was so much better. And so that one is definitely one of my needed to go. Was a waste of time. The other one was Centurions.
Ooh. That was one I always wanted to watch, but could almost never catch, much like Insectoids or whatever it was.
Yeah, it to me, it was always just like, can I get on to my Transformers or whatever the next cartoon was? It just wasn't great.
Sectars. I was thinking Sectars.
Yeah. And the final, and I may get some slack over this, is Brave Star.
I actually liked Brave Star.
I just could not get into this, no matter how hard I tried. You know, the horse that suddenly can walk like a man, but then he'd go back to walking on 4 legs. Like, why? Why would you do that? I mean, if you can walk on 2 legs, just walk on 2. It just, I love Westerns, but this one just, it didn't work for me.
For me, it was too close to Black Star. And I loved Black Star with his star sword and all the cool things he could do with that. And maybe I was too old for the target audience by that point, but I'm with you. I did not like Brave
And that may have been my problem too. Because I mean,
I had to look it up, but now I see what Black Star is. Black Star is the slightly more ethnic version of Dragon's Lair, but that's okay.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you had the Overlord from Black Star. You had a figure with the half of the Star Sword. In fact, if I remember correctly, they had Flint inside the chest, and so you could flick a wheel and his chest
That's
would
who
spark.
that was?
Yeah.
I just had that toy because it was at a garage sale and it sparked.
That was from Black Star, buddy.
Yeah, you're right. I did have that. Now that I see who the villain is, yeah, I absolutely had that.
Yep.
Wow.
Matthew?
Yeah, so I've got a few here, and you're either going to hate me or love me. The first one I'm going to throw out there, droids and Ewoks.
Okay. You know, I'm not gonna hate you.
I have it on DVD, and you are vindicated.
I loved Star Wars. I was looking so forward to seeing this cartoon, and it came out, and they were so incredibly goofy. And there was so much they did with the universe that made it, rather than this, it was to me, it was almost as real as a fictional world could get, right? That it had rules. I was a Star Wars fan, and this thing came out and just crapped all over it.
You just described the prequels for me.
So this cartoon and the Ewoks, I loved the Ewok Adventure movie, but then they got the second Ewok movie, and I began to feel like something didn't quite smell right, and it was getting pretty bad. And what was happening is I was going through puberty, and and I'm not talking about me smelling bad, body odor, whatever. The show, I was hitting this point where I was like, these themes don't resonate with me. I'm not 6 years old anymore, and that's what the second Ewok movie seemed to be directed at. Same thing with these cartoons. It was definitely directed for the Muppet Babies kind of audience.
Which was an awesome cartoon.
Yes.
Muppet Babies was. I mean, Howie Mandel did some of the voices for that. It was awesome. But anyway, but these Star Wars cartoons completely ruined my image of Star Wars, and they were so disappointing.
I don't.
Well, I mean,
you.
the biggest problem for that simply was they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, they just made these films, and they're trying to hit a market to try to get kids still interested in Star Wars because there was nothing else coming out. And I think if they were to do it now, because we've seen what they've done, they've hit the right notes, both for kids and adults.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still early on that they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah, that's so true.
There was another set of cartoons that were kind of bundled all together. It was called the Saturday Starcade. And there was Pac-Man, there was Space Ace, there was Dragon's Lair. There were several others. I can't remember right now, but they were all cartoons based on popular video games from your neighborhood arcade. Yep. And it was a great concept. It was definitely trying to capitalize on a fad of the time, and so it was not going to be long-lived at all. But they hurried it out so fast that even to a child like me, it was obvious that the writing was really bad. Pac-Man was probably the best of all of them. That one lasted for a few seasons at least, but even then it was, I don't know. I did not like Starcade. Do you guys remember those at all?
I do, but for me, I mean, like, I remember going to the arcade with you when I was like 5 and 6. And I wanted to play Dragon's Lair so bad because it was an animated video game that I didn't realize at the time, mind you, was on Laserdisc. And so it was like this super high fidelity actual cartoon that you could play on a reaction. But I didn't know how to play that game, and it was expensive. It was like $1 to play.
Oh, it was 2 quarters.
That's like $1 in 80s money.
Yes, in an age when everything was 1 quarter.
Yes, so...
I hated that game. I've never beat that game.
I eventually, on Sega CD, beat it so many times that it didn't matter if... Because in some levels, they would do like a mirror world so that they would reverse things.
Yeah.
I got it to the point where I could do it flawlessly all the way through. It took me 12 minutes, 43 seconds or something like that.
Wow.
And then so I could play straight through, start to finish every single time because of what you just said, that as a kid, first of all, I couldn't play it. When I did play it, I couldn't get past like the first scene.
Yeah.
And then when I got older and I understood how the mechanics worked, I was like, I'm going to beat the heck out of this thing. and I did.
You're coming for it.
And then I got Dragon's Lair 2 on DVD and then used the DVD player remote. And yeah, it was... I love those games. I still have those games, and I sometimes still play those games. So yeah,
I do have another cartoon I want to throw out. I stumbled on it that it's just worthless. I wish I had. It ruined my Saturday morning cartoon viewing, and that was Gem and the Holograms.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Our sister loved that show.
Okay, I had no shame loving that show.
Oh, I hated it.
In an age where every toy had to transform, that was the coolest set of Barbies I'd ever seen. And now here's the funny thing: when my wife and I, when we first moved here to Utah, like over a decade ago, it came up on Netflix, and I was like, okay. My wife, I always tease her that her childhood was a little, like, her childhood was not as fun and entertaining as my childhood was. And so I was like, here's a cartoon you have to see. And we watched the whole soap opera, and that's what it was. It was a soap opera for kids. I mean, the dude of the flick is a man named Rio. That should tell you everything you need to know. We watched it.
Yeah, just listen to Duran Duran.
That's right. Her name is Rio, and she dances on the set, and she's a guy. Anyway, so
I'm going to throw one more out there. No need for comment. Groans are allowed. Kid Video.
I liked Kid Video because I was a video game nerd.
Yeah.
Well, this was a cartoon with the evil villain Master Blaster, who would occasionally throw in snippets of music videos. So you had the live-action music video usually on a screen in the animated cartoon world. This isn't Captain N in the video games.
Oh, you're right.
This was music videos where they were trying to get contemporary pop radio hits into Saturday morning.
You're right. I was juxtaposing the two.
And it also got confused because there was a Nintendo game called Master Blaster. So a lot of people were like, "Oh,
that was an arcade game that first time I ever played it was in Salt Lake City."
All right.
Nice.
So last topic, guilty pleasures. What are some cartoons that you secretly enjoyed, but you're afraid to admit? It's time to unburden your conscience and come clean on Dungeon Crawlers Radio. Give us 2 or 3 titles and why, despite the stigma, they appeal to you.
First and foremost, Gem, even though I proudly proclaimed it a moment ago. Gem, absolutely my jam. Beverly Hills Teens.
Ooh.
Beverly Hills Teens was, I believe it was originally a Japanese cartoon that became more Americanized. And it was basically like cartoon Kardashians before Kardashians were a thing. And Punky Brewster. I'm going to go back to that one really quick. And also, before the show is over, I think we should list our favorite theme songs, but please go on.
All right. So for me, Inspector Gadget. I totally
Inspector Gadget was dope.
I fell in love with that cartoon, but the main reason I fell in love with that cartoon is because I was watching the old black and white Get Smart TV series.
Yes.
And Don Adams is the voice of Inspector Gadget in those, and it was fantastic. The more guilty pleasure is Care Bears. I watched the crap out of Care Bears.
I loved Care Bears as a kid.
I had my own Care Bears as well. I had Grumpy Bear and I had Bedtime Bear.
I never had a Care Bear, but I had a Popple.
Oh. Yep. So I had those. So Care Bears was on there. I've seen all the episodes. I've even seen the Care Bear movies.
Yes, the Care Bear movies were good.
Yeah. So that would be mine.
Well, I've got 3. Gonna go first with Hanna-Barbera's Laugh Olympics.
Nice.
I even had the lunchbox. Now I loved this because after some of the cartoons I watched after school, and they were probably cartoons from the 60s and 70s, but the characters would all compete in these sports events like an Olympics, and they had 4 teams. One of them was the Dastardlies, the bad guys, and then you
that
had
dog that's always like.
Yes, certainly.
Muttley.
There you go.
That's his name.
And but there, and I loved watching this because it was like a crossover event of all of these other cartoons. Another one that I liked was Godzilla. I always loved the old Godzilla movies, and Godzilla finally made it to Saturday morning cartoons. And he even had, but unfortunately, his son was there, Gadzooks. But I still loved the cartoon. I just loved seeing Godzilla emerge from the ocean, do some bad A stuff, and then disappear.
Yep.
It was a great cartoon.
All right, what's the last one?
The last one, and it's really unfortunate the way the things have turned out with current events, but back then in the late 70s, this was a very significant culture-changing cartoon.
Okay.
Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids.
Yep, that's exactly what I thought you were going to say.
So Bill Cosby comes on there, and for those of you who don't know, he has a degree in child psychology, and he actually had devoted a large portion of his life and his money to doing things to educate and uplift kids, especially inner city youth.
Yes.
Now, what was interesting about this cartoon, and I didn't realize it at the time, and for those of you listening to me on the radio, you may not know this, but I'm white. And I'm watching this cartoon of Bill Cosby and all these caricatures of kids from his past, the people that he used to hang out with, and they were all African American.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It never registered. It was not important. I didn't know what life was like in New York, in the ghetto, or wherever they had set this, but I saw that these kids were poor. My family wasn't particularly wealthy. We had some rough times we went through. They were playing in a junkyard. I used to wander through my my grandfather's junkyard, wood pile, lumber and other things. You'd find treasures in there. It was great. I could relate to these kids, and it never occurred to me that race could be an issue. And that was one of the things I thought was fantastic about this cartoon, is that the card was never played. It was never made an issue. People just were there, and these were your friends.
Hey. Yeah. No, that's the thing. That's a learned trait. As kids, we didn't see that. We didn't see color or anything like that. We had these great films, cartoons and stuff like that, where you could do those things, and we never saw those things. That's something that over time society teaches you, and it gets pushed on you from other people. Now, unfortunately, we kind of have agendas and stuff like that that's pushed, which is unfortunate. Not all the time, but there is kind of that stuff, which I miss those days when it was just simple, where we could watch Fat Albert and the gang doing whatever crazy antics they were doing, and we enjoyed it. And there was not only that, you could watch He-Man or Transformers or G.I. Joe, and there was always a message at the end.
Yep.
That was positive and uplifting. So even though we watched the cartoon, there was still something to think about and learn, about being positive or being a good friend or whatever.
Not cheating and staying away
not
from
cheating.
drugs.
And those are things that I really miss from cartoons. But not only that, they were fun. There wasn't this agenda tied to them, other than trying to sell toys.
Yeah, that was super agenda right there.
Yeah. All right, so we are out of time, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
So we're not going to do a Gamer Forge this evening just because we are running out of time. However, how are we going to do a lightning round? Because
tonight's lightning round is anywhere like give me your top 2 most memorable theme songs that someone else hasn't mentioned as their top memorable theme song.
Oh, absolutely. I got Gummy Bears.
That was first on my list too.
Gummy Bears.
Okay.
It was
Gummy Bears.
Nice.
Bouncing here and there.
It's actually on my phone, my playlist.
Daniel. Oh no, go ahead, Matthew. Did you have another one?
Oh, most memorable.
Okay. Hang on to it.
Okay.
Let's go in a round, and we'll go twice, and if we have time, we'll go a third time. Okay. So Matthew said Gummy Bear. Daniel, go.
So mine technically isn't a cartoon, but it's one of the songs that's always stuck in my head because I still feel like it qualifies for, and that's Fraggle Rock.
Oh, Fraggle Rock.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
DuckTales.
Oh, very good.
Ooh.
Yep.
Yes.
Matthew, do you have another one?
Yes, I do. I mentioned it earlier, but Mighty Orbots. Go, Mighty Orbots! It was. I loved that theme. I couldn't help but sing it, and even
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when your parents walk in on kids in the living room watching TV and they're singing "Go Mighty Orbots" and stuff, yeah, that's embarrassing, and I never wanted to sing again.
Yeah,
I hear that. Daniel,
I'm gonna skip. Transformers because that's just a dead giveaway. But the next one I'm gonna have to pick would be Thundercats. That one is stuck in your head.
Good choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm gonna give my last selection to Tailspin.
Nice.
But I'd like to throw an honorable mention to Silverhawks.
Okay.
That was a rockin' intro song.
That was a good one. I'm just gonna throw one more out there, because you can hear it in your head. X-Men the Animated Series.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yes, and if you were paying attention in Doctor Strange 2, when the Illuminati comes on, there's a theme for each person, and the X-Men theme shows up for one person in particular. And I was sitting there and like, do you know what that was? Do you know what that was? You weren't. My daughter was sitting next to me. You weren't born yet, but that song, that's significant.
Yeah. I like to tell people who are too young that they weren't sperm yet. I think that's the best expression. Wow. I used to tell it to my students. I'd be like, I saw this movie in theaters before you were sperm.
Nice.
It's scientifically correct.
I'm just going to throw two out. One would be Darkwing Duck.
That's a great one.
For Darkwing Duck. The other one is the theme song for Batman the Animated Series.
I was just thinking it.
That one is amazing.
Yes.
That's Danny Elfman at his best.
You know, folks, we obviously have gone through quite a ton of nostalgia tonight, just trying to hit the highest of points, but there were about 47 different shows that we mentioned tonight. I would like to push back on all of you listeners. Go find two that you have never watched. Find the intro on YouTube, find an episode. The pilots were always the roughest episodes, but if you can find like the first season and you have that kind of time, please watch two shows you've never seen before, and we want to hear what you think about our childhood shows.
Go watch some Great Ape.
Oh, Grape Ape! Pebbles and Bam Bam.
Oh, yeah.
Josie and the Pussycats.
Anything Hanna-Barbera is just solid. I mean, you can't go wrong with Hanna-Barbera.
Hanna-Barbera and Warner Brothers Looney Tunes, always a good time.
McGill the Gorilla Show, Top Cat.
I Blue Falcon and Space Ghost.
Oh, yeah.
That's some
Jabberjaw.
That was some good stuff.
I love some Jabberjaw. But, all right, folks. With that said, it's time to close the show. As you can clearly see, the show still goes on, even though Alton is not with us for now. But he will return. And when he returns, we might see an epic battle. And maybe a lightsaber battle between Matthew and Alton to see who reigns supreme. Or we'll just let them both be on the show, and then it's a 4-man show. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
The audience benefits.
Ooh, yes. But
I always bring a blaster to a lightsaber fight.
Yeah, we saw what happened when Han Solo brought a blaster to a fight. Vader just held up his hand. Anyways, that just went nowhere. That just fell flat on its face. But go check out these cartoons. They're great cartoons. You can find them many different places. And whether it's YouTube, whether it's Crunchyroll, I think is what the app is called.
Crunchyroll.
Yeah, Crunchyroll. I mean, even some of these cartoons are showing up on HBO Max and other locations. You're gonna love them. I mean, especially some of them don't hold up to time. I will admit that. There are some that just, like the early ones of Flintstone, the Flintstones where Fred smokes and he's bossing Wilma around like she's a second-rate citizen. But after you get past that first season, we're good. It's funny. But these are part of our childhood. There's a reason we love them. It's because they brought tons of joy to our lives and they were fun and entertaining. So go check those out. And we'll catch you next week. Same DCR time, same DCR channel. We'll catch you later.
And Dungeon Crawlers, especially dear Brother Alton, tell your story, whatever may come.
And whether you watched your cartoons early on a Saturday morning or you streamed them on the internet like a plebe, always remember to be epic and don't suck.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.